Our next speaker needs very little introduction. Sadiq Khan was elected Mayor of London in May 2016 and was re-elected in 2021. At age 43, he was diagnosed with asthma, which his GP explained has become an increasingly common consequence of poor air quality in the city. Since then, air quality has become one of his defining campaign issues and prompted him to write a book, Breathe, Tackling the Climate Emergency. Please welcome the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. Hi, Sadiq. Thanks for being here.
My absolute pleasure. Good to see you, man.
So, we heard this morning that basically everything's kind of interrelated when it comes to climate. So I'm really interested to learn initially, like for you, why air quality was such an important campaign issue for you.
Well, as a politician, I was a parliamentarian for 11 years, and I never really campaigned on health issues or issues around climate change. And so there's a great saying from a Democratic politician, Tip O'Neill. He says, all politics is local. I think, if I'm honest, for me, all politics is personal. And when I was, in 2014, I agreed to run the London Marathon to raise money for charity, raised a lot of money for charity, beat Ed Balls and Andy Burnham. And a few months later, I wasn't feeling great. And as you said, I was shocked to discover doing something I love, running, in the city I love, London, I'd become sick.
Yeah.
And then I began researching this, and I realized you can't see the pollution. You can't see particulate matter. You can't see nitrogen dioxide. You can't see nitrogen oxide. But it makes you sick. It leads to, across the country, around 34,000 premature deaths a year across London, around 4,000 premature deaths a year. I did some more research across the globe. More people die because of air pollution than tobacco. Leads to asthma, dementia, cancer, and children having stunted lungs forever. But there's something we can do about it, and that's my journey towards the policies in London to reduce air pollution.
Yeah, I mean, famously there was the tragic death of Ella Kissy-Deborah, I think back in 2013 from an acute asthma attack. How do you feel we've progressed since then? What progress have we made?
Well, Ella's mum, Rosamond, is an amazing mum. Londoner and campaigner. She had no idea when her daughter was diagnosed age 7 with asthma, no idea when her daughter passed age 9 after a horrific asthma attack, that you could do a graph, the days when there was bad traffic outside her home, the days where there was bad air pollution, the days where her daughter was suffering a bad asthma attack. And we helped her get a second inquest, and the coroner concluded air pollution was a factor. So we know the causes of air pollution now. And so I don't see how you can ignore the causes, but also we know what we can do to prevent it. And so we began a journey to devise policies that would address this. The first stage was using technology. So my first year as mayor, we installed the largest number of air quality monitors of any city in the world. We now have more than 400 air quality monitors. So you can download the app and find out how good or bad the air is on a certain day. We needed to do that to educate Londoners how bad things were. So if we were here in the 1950s, you could see the Great Smog, right? If we were here during the middle of the 19th century, you could smell the Great Smell, the Great Stink. That led to sewers being built in the 19th century. It led to power stations being removed from the centre of London in the 20th century, but you can't see the pollution. So air quality monitors, stage 1. Stage 2, that gave us permission to bring in policies like the ultra-low emission zone. First in central London. Within the course of a year, we saw a reduction by almost 50% of air pollution, a third fewer children being admitted to hospital with air pollution illnesses. We expanded it a bit more to inner London, another 4 million people breathing clean air, a further reduction by 20% of air pollution, 500 schools breathing clean air, and now we've got it covering all of London. So all 9 million Londoners breathe clean air, the biggest clean air zone in the world. More than 600 miles big. To give you an idea of scale, double the size of the city of New York, who haven't got a congestion charge, let alone a ultra-low emission zone.
Well, I'm very keen to get into ULEZ in a little bit, but just in terms of like the progress, there was a report from your office last June that said the whole population of London is forecast to remain exposed to nitrogen dioxide and fine particulate matter above the recommended WHO air quality guidelines in 2023 unless there's further, significant action. So I guess the question is like, how do we accelerate this progress? How do we make it go faster? Because it is a challenge we face despite the electrification of our grid and,
great.
policies like ULEZ.
No, great question. So when I became mayor, there was a piece of research done by King's College, and King's College said it would take us 193 years to bring our air within lawful limits, British legislation lawful limits, 193 years. Because of our policies, we will do it by 2025.
Well, that's but the 2030 date.
So what's happened is the WHO have done some amazing research, and what they've said is that no level of exposure to air pollution is safe. So broadly speaking, the British government standard is 40 micrograms per cubic meter. The WHO standards is 10 micrograms per cubic meter, so it's a much, much more stringent standard. So we'll be within the British government's standards by 2025. The target was 2010, and we will be within the WHO standards by 2030. Okay. The British government's target is 2040, which means another generation basically written off by having a target that's 2040 rather than 2030.
Sure. So let's talk about ULEZ. We saw in Uxbridge the kind of like the weaponization of ULEZ as kind of part of the culture war that we're seeing now. And many commentators suggested that the PM's rowing back of his kind of climate pledges was down to what he sees as a wedge issue. I'm interested to get your thoughts on how we raise the quality of public discourse on such a crucial issue.
Look, in general terms, my view is you get two types of politicians. You get one type of politician who addresses people's fears. People have genuine concerns and fears. The cost of a compliant vehicle. We call it just transition. So one type of politician will address your fears. Could be around inability to have decent healthcare, inability to have decent housing. I've got to address your genuine concerns. Another type of politician will play on your fears. Well, the reason why you can't get decent housing because of immigration. The reason why all these problems you're experiencing, cost of living, is because of tackling climate change. And so in Uxbridge, you saw a political party playing on people's fears a month before the rollout happened. And I think the Conservatives have learned the wrong lesson from Uxbridge and Ruislip. They're now trying to manufacture a culture, and some of the stuff they said during their party conference, a lot of disinformation, sort of the straw man.
I'll give you the war on meat, for instance.
Yeah. Apparently, there's going to be a massive tax on meat. News to me. Apparently, you will not be able to go to a shop outside your local area. News to me. Apparently, you're all going to have 7 bins outside your home, but thankfully you won't now because of the Conservative government. That's sort of misinformation, and it's a proxy actually. And what you're seeing is people with genuine concerns being used by populist politicians, and you see it in the UK, you see it across the globe. We saw what happened in Argentina recently, and it's happening across the globe. And I think, look, the responsibility we have is to combine our values with the evidence and find solutions. It's difficult to do in 280 characters, but I think people are more intelligent than we give them credit for, and we can do it, and we can take people with us.
Yeah, just focusing on that piece around the cities thing, where you're not allowed to leave your neighbourhoods, and I mean, obviously, like a classic piece of misinformation. But I think it kind of like taps into something which is like, I think you lead the mayor's group of climate activism and trying to get cities down to sort of like take on these kind of 15-minute sort of cities policies. Like, do you think it's the case that actually, in a lot of places, it's cities that are taking the lead, not necessarily central government? We've seen the government rowing back on its climate commitments only very recently.
Yeah. There's a great quote. I wish it was mine. It's not. It's from a mayor of Denver. He said that if the 19th century is a century known for empire, 20th century is a century known for nation states, the 21st century is about cities and mayors. And the reason why he said that was because we're far more nimble. We can move far more quickly. Yeah. Whereas, governments, presidents, prime ministers take some time. A lot of them are targets 2050, 2060, when they're not going to be around. There's often, gridlock when it comes to the Senate or Congress or Parliament. And mayors basically are elected to move much more swiftly, but also because, we're closer to the people we serve, we can move faster. And also, I'm making a generalization to make the point, but in most cities, you tend to get people who are more diverse, younger, better educated, so they follow the evidence, so they follow the science. Yeah. and you're seeing great progress made, an amazing stat. So across the globe, by 2030, experts predict global emissions will go up by 14%. Across the cities who are members of C40, they're going to go down by more than 50%. And so, because we're trying to address the challenges, but also turning a challenge into an opportunity, green tech jobs, make sure we get green finance, creating the jobs that we need to do to solve the problems.
Yeah, policies like the IRA in the US.
Spot on.
Yeah. Talking about the disinformation thing, there was the fake audio of you released before Remembrance Day. The Met said there was no offence committed. There are around 2 people going to vote in 2024 across the world: Mexico, India, United States, probably the UK. How do you think we best support democracy and ensure that disinformation doesn't create ever more kind of polarized positions?
Look, the conversation we should be having around AI are the sort of conversations we didn't have around the World Wide Web 20, 30 years ago. What I mean by that, look, basically speaking, we all agree, by and large, the internet, social media is a wonderful, wonderful thing, but there are some issues. Same goes for AI. Wonderful, wonderful thing. You saw recently the writer strikes and the actor strikes now resolved, but a big concern was the use of AI, and one of the things that President Biden announced was a sort of an agreement around commercial AI. That's okay, we need that sort of regulation and control, but there's also things called deep fake AI. Most recently, what Greg's alluding to is, so last weekend, Armistice Day, Remembrance Sunday, quite tense because our previous Home Secretary sort of inflamed tensions and wanted to ban any protest taking place that weekend. We all know the big pro-Palestinian protest planned for Saturday. The Home Secretary and Prime Minister thought the police should be banning those protests. I made the point, hold on, it's not for us to tell the police what to do. They've got operational independence, and the Commissioner was quite clear. There wasn't the threshold, the evidence to ban the protest. And then on the Friday before that weekend, actually the irony was I was hosting a Remembrance Day event in City Hall. Something went viral, which is a deep fake audio of me, and what I was saying on this deep fake was I'm paraphrasing, sod Remembrance Day, just postpone that so we can have a pro-Palestinian march.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing. And so, the far right amplified this, it surfaced and it was a big problem.
Yeah.
And a lot of people believed it was me in this deep fake video. And, we saw on Saturday the far right turning up in central London, inverted commas, to protect the cenotaph against the pro-Palestinian marches. And I think this is just one example of what could happen if we're not careful.
Yeah.
If there's a close election, a deepfake video of a candidate could have an impact. If there are tense times in relation to community tensions, a deepfake video could lead to, riots and so forth. And so we've got to be cognizant of that in relation to the social media companies' responsibilities, in relation to legislation keeping up with deepfake, but also with criminal law keeping up as well. So I'm not criticizing the police, but the law's not keeping up and not kept up with AI, and it's moving so fast.
Yeah.
I'll give you another example. We saw last year misinformation amplified hugely on Twitter, X, at a small cost of money. And you were seeing in your Twitter feeds, X feeds, all this sort of anti-stuff because of the use of the algorithms. And so I think the problem with legislators is we're not keeping up with with the innovation.
Yeah.
And it's really important we do.
I guess that begs a question around sort of like putting technologists into, into government.
Spot on.
Spot on, yeah.
I don't mean patsy interviews from the Prime Minister and Elon Musk. I mean, proper genuine engagement. And we saw this week during the COVID public inquiry, the Chief Scientific Advisor yesterday, Patrick Vallance, basically saying the Prime Minister didn't understand the science, right?
Yeah.
And we're here today from the Chief Medical Officer. That should concern us. That that actually politicians don't understand in relation to a virus, but also in relation to innovation and technology. And we should be, at the design phase of legislation, regulation, working with experts. Not to make sure it's self-serving for you guys, but what is the technology? What are the plus sides? What are the downsides? What can we do to give you the space to innovate right? But also to make sure there are boundaries on what you can do.
Yeah, it's about that balance between mitigating the risks and innovating at the same time. But I think it is interesting because you talked about sort of like the elections that are coming next year. I mean, not all candidates are going to do that Michelle Obama thing. If they go low, we go high. We have already seen fake videos of Joe Biden kind of looking like he's not got his full kind of capacities. Do you think the risk is that the tools are out there, they are very easy to access, pretty much anyone can do them now, and not all candidates are going to play by the rules? Not all some are very happy, and you mentioned Elon Musk. What's happened at Twitter, safety standards having dropped since he's made the purchase. We saw, he's been, retweeting pretty questionable material, to put it mildly. What kind of level of responsibility do you think we have in terms of really acting, in terms of legislation, in terms of policy, around making sure that these platforms are, controlled in ways that actually support democracy rather than undermining it?
Well, there's of course a role for legislation. There's also a responsibility on the social media companies. Yeah. To be fair to TikTok, on last Friday, they were very quick in relation to the deepfake video. But I think one of the things that you will know is most people below the age of 30, their main source of news is TikTok.
Yes.
Some of these social media companies, and often there's not the checks that used to take place when we were growing up in relation to the mainstream media, and that, I think, brings a greater responsibility on the social media companies to make sure they're not spreading disinformation, misinformation. Because the lie's out there before you've got a chance to rebut. There's like the great quote about a lie's gone all the way around the world before truth's put on its socks, right? And with social media, it can go even faster. And that's why it's really important for the social media companies to understand there's a responsibility. Sometimes they will know things are wrong. Sometimes they won't. Once things are pointed out to them to take action, there's a space for regulation. You said legislation, but also there's a space for candidates to educate the electorate. I think one of the things we fail to do, politicians have failed to do, is understand our role in being educators. And there's a great quote from a politician saying, the best politician is a teacher. And we've lost the art, my profession, of being educators. We can't just put it on all of the social media companies. I think we've got to be educating the electorate in a better way, so they're not so easily swayed by fake news and disinformation. But I do worry in relation to there are three big elections next year. There's the presidential elections in the United States, there's the general elections, and there's the biggest one, the mayoral elections in London. And so if it's a close election, you can imagine the difference it can make. But think about what we know now about Cambridge Analytica.
Sure.
What we know about the referendum in 2016, the US presidential elections, about forces outside of your boundaries trying to influence the outcome.
I guess the challenge is, and we've seen this from like the social media companies and all of the Web 2.0 platforms, is that we only just passed the online safety bill at the end of October, so it's very, very hard for politicians who are incredibly busy. They're maybe we've just seen like another cabinet reshuffle. Many ministers are in position for like months rather than years. It's very, very hard, I think, for politicians to keep up. And AI, as someone who was in charge of a newsroom yesterday where we were trying to keep up with the open AI story, it's tough. So let's talk a little bit about 2024, the most important election, obviously, not India, not the US, London Mayor. I'm interested to get your thoughts on, for this audience who are thinking about climate sustainability, what are your pledges for 2024, and also how are you going to achieve them most importantly?
No, I want London to be not just the greenest city in the world, but the smartest city in the world. So when I became mayor, we appointed, just imagine, we'd not had until I became mayor a chief digital officer for London. And so we've gone from a city when I became mayor that had gigabyte capability of 4%, it's now 89%. So we've got to always be moving forward in relation to the green economy, in relation to air quality, in relation to smart technology, in relation to particularly post-Brexit. What is the role of our country and our city post-Brexit? In my view, it's not Singapore on the Thames, deregulation. It's more high-skilled, well-paid jobs. I mean, the concern, I think Mark Carney articulated this, is not so much Singapore on the Thames, but Argentina on the Channel. And so it's really important we understand the downside of a race to the bottom, but also there's opportunity in relation to some of the challenges we face. And I'm really excited about the future of our city and our country. And I'll give you one example, just for 30 seconds, allow me to be party political. But in 24 years of the mayoralty in London, 24 years, there's only been one short 4-year period where there's been a Labour mayor and a Labour prime minister. During those 4 years, by the way, we managed to secure the Olympics, get permission for the Elizabeth line, which is amazing, and also in 1 year build 8,000 council homes. That's just 1 year, one term. So imagine what we could do with a government that's not anti-London, working with myself, and I'm really excited in relation to. I'll give you another amazing stat. We now have more electric buses in London than any city in Western Europe, more rapid charging points than any city in Western Europe. We've got to make sure we carry on building a future that is greener, but also fairer as well.
Well, that sounds like a great point to end. So, Sadiq, thank you so much for joining us. It's been absolutely delightful talking to you.
Great, thanks a lot. Pleasure.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.